Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be doing a review and kind of testing out some new products from e.l.f. I feel like e.l.f. has been coming out with a lot of really great looking and intriguing products. So for today, a lot of you guys actually messaged me on Instagram and asked me to test these out. I have for you some of their bite-sized eyeshadow palettes. I thought a lot of you guys would be interested in these, and I'm very intrigued by these just because they are so cute and little. I hope they're picking up on camera. They also only retail for $3 a piece, which is very affordable. I feel like affordable but good eyeshadow is hard to come by, so I have high hopes for these. I'm gonna be testing them out and doing swatches for you guys. I also picked up their Putty Eye Primer cream just because I love their putty face primer. And then lastly, I'm gonna be trying out the new Hydrating Camo Concealer. I have been seeing so much hype around this concealer. I've heard it is really great. I enjoyed the original one, so I'm excited to see how the Hydrating Camo Concealer performs today. So those are the products I'm going to be testing out today and giving you guys my first impressions on. I love e.l.f. They're one of my favorite makeup brands, high-end drugstore overall. I think they make some really great product for amazing prices. So let's go ahead and jump on into testing these products out. I really hope that you guys enjoy seeing this video, and let's just go ahead and get started. As always, I'm going to start off with my eyes. So I'm going to try out the Putty Eye Primer first. As I mentioned in the intro, I am so curious about this just because I love the texture and the effect that the face primer gives. I'm really curious to see how this feels on the eyes, if it has that same putty texture, or maybe it's a little bit more like a paint pot. So here's what the little Putty Eye Primer pot looks like. Really cute, definitely giving off like some paint pot vibes from MAC. And this eye primer claims to amp up your eyeshadow looks with this color intensifying eye putty primer that locks in eyeshadow for 12 hours of crease proof wear, infused with vegan squalene known to moisturize throughout the day. And I have the Putty Eye Primer in the shade Cream. So far, this is reminding me so much of my MAC paint pot in Soft Ochre. I actually have Soft Ochre right here. It's a little dried out. I haven't used it in a while, but I will show you guys side by side. This one right here is the e.l.f. Putty Primer, and this right here is the MAC paint pot in Soft Ochre. So I feel like those are really close. This could definitely be a color dupe at least, and I'm assuming that it's gonna do the same thing. Having these long acrylics, it's hard for me to kind of really feel the product with my hand, but it definitely feels denser than like the face putty primers. It feels almost like a little bit of like a potted concealer. It's definitely not as like light and putty like as the face primer, but I feel like this will work better like an eye primer because, like I said, it's a little bit more concealer like. It's a little bit more pigmented. This is what it looks like when I pick it up on the brush, if you guys can see. I'm going to go in and apply it with this Sigma flat definer brush just on one eye so we can compare it to my typical priming method under the new eyeshadows. So far, it's applying really nicely. I would say the color is a little bit dark on me. I don't know if that's picking up on camera. It's a little dark and a little bit yellow, but that's okay because we're gonna cover it up with eyeshadow anyway. But I would say if you're any more fair than I am, then this eye base in the shade Cream is going to be just a little dark on you. I do believe they have a more like pinky cool tone version, and I think it also comes in just a pure white base if I am not mistaken. But so far the formula is very nice and creamy. It might be a little bit drier than I typically go for an eye base, but these types of primers typically do that to me. Like even the paint pot, I found that over time it was just a little bit too dry for my liking on my eyelids. I'll zoom you guys in so you could see. There's a little up close of the primer. I just feel like it's being a little bit clingy on some dry patches, so maybe if you guys have really extremely dry eyelids, you might not love this, but it's not horrible. It's pretty much like completely dry on my lids as well. The coverage is really nice on my eye though. It's not super full coverage, but typically I don't necessarily need that on my lid. I just like to lay something down for a nice base. So just to show you guys, on my left eye, I'm going in with a little bit of my Too Faced Born This Way concealer. This is how, again, I would typically prime my eyes, so I just want to see that side-by-side performance. And here is the difference between concealer and the Putty Eye Primer. I definitely feel like the concealer is doing a better job at just smoothing out my lids, whereas again, the Putty Eye Primer, I'm having some issues with it being smooth on the drier parts of my eyes. So maybe if you have oily eyelids, you will like this, but I think so far, just off of like initial application, I am enjoying my typical method of just concealer. So now moving on to what I am probably the most excited about trying in this video are the bite-size eyeshadow palettes. I am so excited to try these. Like I said in the intro, it is incredibly hard to find eyeshadows this affordable to perform well. I know Wet n Wild has some really great eyeshadows for $4.99, $5, but other than that, that's just about it. I feel like when you get $3, $2 kind of mark for eyeshadow, the quality is just not there, and I have heard pretty decent things about these e.l.f. bite-size shadows. So before I go ahead and try them on the eyes, I'm just going to show you guys the colors of the 3 palettes that I picked out for myself, as well as go ahead and swatch all of them on the arms. I know arm swatches aren't absolutely everything. I think it's most important how they perform once they're picked up with a brush and applied on the eye. So the first one that I picked up is the bite-size eyeshadow quad in the shade Pumpkin Pie. This is what Pumpkin Pie looks like. You guys know this is totally and completely up my alley with the warm shades, the bronzy shades, more of like an orangey undertone to it. Here are the swatches for the Pumpkin Pie bite-size palette. I feel like this quality so far upon swatching is really great for being a $3 palette. Again, we will have to see how it performs on the eyes, but that's beautiful. That's not bad at all. Next shade that I picked out in the bite-sized palettes is in the shade Truffles. This is a little bit more of a deep neutral quad. Definitely doesn't lean really warm or cool. Just kind of straight neutral mid-tone types of shades with one shimmer in there, and the rest are matte shades. Actually, looking a little bit closer, I don't know how well it's going to pull on camera, but the black in this palette actually isn't completely matte. I don't know if you guys can see from that angle. It does have a little bit of shimmer in there. This is what the Truffles palette looks like. So far, I think the first palette, Pumpkin Pie, definitely swatched better. That one impressed me a little bit more than this one, but this one, again, is not bad by any means for only $3. This one is called Acai You, like an acai bowl, and this is just filled with beautiful, beautiful blue shades. These are so hard to hold because they're so tiny. This is what Acai You looks like. That's kind of hard to say. Acai You. This is so fun. When I play around with color, personally for me, blue is my favorite to play around with. I know they had like a berry one, a green one, like a jalapeno type one, but blue was just calling my name. Here are the full swatches of the Acai You palette, probably the least impressive of all of them, as I mentioned. I feel like these don't really like pack a punch. I also feel like the 2 middle blue shades, although they don't look that similar in the pan, this one definitely is supposed to be more metallic. I feel like those kind of look similar on camera. I don't know, I'm just overall not loving this particular one. Definitely the most disappointing swatches wise out of all of them. I'm gonna go in and start doing an application. I'm going to try to use at least one shade from each palette, and of course I'm going to start off with the Pumpkin Pie palette. So I'm gonna start off with this one, and I'm going to go in with the first shade right there. There's really not a ton of fallout on the brush, and again, I'm not someone where fallout really bothers me, especially if it is a more affordable shadow, but some of my favorite high-end shadows, like my Anastasia palettes, have fallout as well, so it doesn't really bother me too much. So I'm going to start just fluffing this warm shade into my crease / transition area. And again, this is the eye with the Putty Eye Primer, and the other eye is primed normal with my concealer and powder. But so far that blended really, really easily and seamlessly. It's not sticking or patchy. That is a really beautiful transition shade. I like this a lot so far. So far, I am so impressed with how this transition shade is applying on my eyes. First of all, this is one of the most like beautiful, warm pumpkin pie type shades. I knew I would love this palette the most just because of the colors, and so far, the formula of this shade is beautiful. Like honestly, really comparable to the blending abilities and the pigmentation of some of my high-end eyeshadows. Like that is so impressive to me for being in a $3 palette. Next, I'm going to go into the second matte shade in the Pumpkin Pie palette on a little bit of a smaller, more concentrated crease brush and run this right underneath the transition shade, like more concentrated right into the crease. I'm just going back in with that original shade just to do some blending and re-intensify the warm transition shade here. So far as the eye primer goes, I definitely feel like the eyeshadows might be a little bit more intense on the side with the Putty Eye Primer. I'm not sure if it's picking up that same way on camera. I just feel like there's a little bit more intensity to the shadow on my right eye. But that's just first impression. We're definitely also going to have to see how, of course, it wears throughout the day, if it creases. But now I want to go ahead and move on to applying a lid shade. And I'm going to go into the Truffles palette for my lid shade and go into this like silvery taupey shade right here on my finger. And I'm just going to kind of pat that on the eye. And then if I need to go in and spray my brush, I will, but I want to see how it looks on its own with my finger. The formula is actually really not that bad, you guys, just going in and applying it with my finger. I feel like my finger picked up a lot of product and it's sticking down to my lid pretty well. I'm not totally sold on the actual shade. Again, I use this like silvery shade inside of the Truffles palette. I almost wish they paired this with like a little bit more of like a champagne shade or something with a little bit more like pink to it, or like I said, just champagne undertones. This silvery lid right now is not my favorite, but I'm gonna go ahead and spray it and see if I could kind of like lighten it up a little bit. I kind of regret spraying that shade, you guys. I don't know if you could see. I do feel like it made it more intense, but it also kind of like chunked up the eyeshadow on my eye, like right there and right there. I feel like it just made it look like a little bit chunky instead of like a nice and smooth metallic shade. But as you guys saw, I did enjoy the formula once I just kind of patted it on with my finger. So now I'm just gonna go back in with the Pumpkin Pie palette and take the darker matte shade and just kind of like re-intensify the crease, and of course do a little bit more blending. There is some fallout from that lid shade as well, so just keep that in mind with these. You probably want to do your eyes first, so I'm just gonna try to sweep that away with a tissue. Moving along, the last thing that I want to do for the eyes is just deepen up the outer corners a little bit, and I'm going in with the dark brown shade in the Truffles palette. Wow, so good, you guys. The mattes so far that I've tried in these palettes are way better than the shimmers. They are so buttery, they blend like a dream, and honestly really like up there with some high-end formulas that I have. Like I said earlier, the mattes are really impressing me so far the most. And I'm just using my original blending brush, but I'm not going in with any additional product just to blend. All right, you guys, I am back. I just went ahead and threw on some mascara and did like primer, foundation, because the next thing that we have to do is jump into testing the Hydrating Camo Concealer. I just want to say that as I was like doing my mascara and stuff, this eye look is really growing on me. I was a little bit unsure about the silver on my lid, but I kind of like rubbed it out with my finger, kind of patted a little bit more on top, and I'm not seeing all of that chunkiness, and I am kind of liking the silvery shade. It's definitely different for me, but I'm really liking it. And as I said earlier, the mattes in those little palettes, at least the few mattes that I've tried, are really great. So now we are going to jump on into concealer. It has been a ride trying to find my shade in this concealer, you guys, and I still don't think I have. So when I saw that e.l.f. released a hydrating version of the original camo concealer, I bought it pretty much right away. I was really excited to try it, but when it came in the mail, I purchased the same exact shade. I have the shade light beige in both of these concealers, but when it came in the mail, if you guys can see, light beige in the new Hydrating Camo Concealer is way dark of a concealer on me. This would probably be like my skin tone shade in the summer. There are the two swatches. This one is the original light beige in the Camo Concealer, and this is light beige in the Hydrating Camo Concealer. So just keep in mind, if you guys are looking to purchase your same shade, it might be a little bit off, which is disappointing because it would make it easier to buy my shade if they were just the same. So I went ahead and purchased another shade of the Hydrating Camo Concealer, and I went up to Light Ivory just because Light Ivory, the shade name, typically works for me, and this was described as a light neutral. I think the new shade is going to be too pink on me. Like I said, you guys, I'm having trouble finding my shade in this concealer. So light beige in the original Camo Concealer, light ivory in Hydrating Camo, and light beige in Hydrating Camo. So this one is definitely my best match, but I'm going to use light ivory today in the hydrating just because I want to test out this new concealer. These camo concealers, the original and the new hydrating one, have that large doe foot, which I love. I'm just so used to a large doe foot nowadays ever since the Tarte Shape Tape came out, and a lot of concealers are hopping on that bandwagon. I love the large doe foot. So I'm just going to start with one eye for now, and I'm going to be using this with my favorite e.l.f. Total Face Sponge. This is the best sponge ever. And here's what one layer of the concealer looks like under one eye compared to no concealer. I think it did a really good job at covering. I wouldn't say it's the absolute most full coverage concealer that I've ever tried. Like my Too Faced Born This Way, you guys know, is my absolute favorite. That is definitely higher coverage than this, but I feel like this is giving a pretty solid, like medium borderline high coverage, and it looks very smoothing and almost like a little hydrating and luminous under the eyes. I do like my under eyes to be pretty full coverage, so I'm just going to take a little bit more of the concealer just to see how it layers right under the eye. That concealer layered so beautifully, you guys. I am loving how this is looking underneath the eye. I love how it looks. It looks really smoothing, really nice and hydrating underneath the eye. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same exact thing on the other eye, probably, of course, applying 2 layers to get them to match. The word beautiful to describe this concealer is such an understatement right now. You guys know I'm obsessed with concealers and I love trying new ones, and this is one of like my favorite new ones that I've tried in such a long time. It looks flawless on the skin, flawless underneath of my eyes, and it also feels really like lightweight on the skin. I don't feel like I'm wearing concealer under my eyes at all right now. I am so impressed with this concealer, and I actually feel like the color is not bad. If I could, I would go just a little bit less pinky, maybe something just a little bit more neutral, but I feel like I could make this color work. Like, it doesn't look too insanely pink or cool tone on my skin, but I am loving how this is looking so far. I just went ahead and finished up the rest of my face. I am really loving how that concealer is looking, aside from, of course, the natural like creases under my eyes that I get with every concealer. I think it looks so great. It looks really smooth, like really nice medium to high coverage. Again, it's not the most absolute full coverage concealer that I've tried, but I feel like a nice like medium to high is nice for day to day. And so far, I definitely see this concealer being a daily in my makeup routine just because I love how it looks under the eye. So the last thing that I have to do just to finish up the eye look and test out these little bite-sized palettes just a little bit more is finish up the shadow on my lower lash line. And for that, I'm going to be taking the Pumpkin Pie palette and dipping into that first warm shade to smudge under my eyes. All right, you guys, so upon finishing my face, I don't know how I did this, but I realized I never used the blue Acai You palette, so I am so sorry if you guys were waiting for me to use that. I think I'm just like so into like neutrals and stuff like that, and I really ended up loving how this eye look turned out. I kind of just kept going with it and totally forgot to even try out the blue palette. So I am going to update you guys on the blue palette just in a sec. I am going to film with it later and insert it right here so you guys can see how the blue one performs. So I went ahead and removed one eye of eyeshadow to the best of my ability. It might look a little bit crazy, but I'm going to go ahead and re-prime with the Putty Eye Primer. So the first shade I'm going to take is this light blue shade right here. I feel like this would be really pretty, just like blown all over the lid. And I'm really curious to see how this shows up on the skin, because it was okay when I swatched it, but I never really used a light pastel blue like this on my eye. It is blending really nicely though, and it's definitely building up. Like the more product that I put on, the more intense that the blue color gets. Next, I think I'm going to go all over the lid with the shimmery blue shade in here. I'm not exactly sure how this look is gonna turn out. I don't know that this is something I would wear on a daily basis. I just want to see how the blue shades actually perform on the eyes. This one in the Acai palette is definitely a little bit more of like a subtle shimmer. There is a ton of fallout from these blue shadow shades. So just so you guys know, this one definitely has like the most fallout of all three of the palettes. I feel like the matte shade is just kind of underwhelming to me, as well as the blue shimmer on the lid. They're definitely just a little underwhelming. Like I feel like it just looks so much more vibrant in the pans, and then when it's on the eyes it kind of just looks like one big like blended together blue shade. But I want to try all of them, so I'm going to go in now with the very deep navy and apply this on the outer corners to just try to deepen it up and maybe make it look like more of a smoky eye. That dark navy shade definitely isn't bad. It's very deep, it's not patchy at all, nice and buttery and pigmented. I'm just really hating that blue shimmer that is on the lid just because it's also patchy. I'm aware of how crazy I look at the moment. I'm going to try to clean the look up by just adding a little bit more concealer under my eye and at the edge of the shadow. So far, I think this one is my least favorite. I'm not just saying that because I like neutrals in general more, but even like quality wise, like 3 out of the 4 of these were kind of a bust for me. I feel like I said, I could make the navy work. I think the navy is my favorite, but the light pastel shade was okay, really just kind of like light and chalky on me. And then the other 2 shimmers, like it's like barely even shimmer, you guys. Like on my lid, it's just a really light sheen, and it's like, oh, there's like a chunk right there just like missing. I just don't see a full look coming out of this blue Acai You palette. All right, you guys, so that is going to complete my initial first impression and thoughts on some of these new e.l.f. products. I'm just gonna go ahead and do a quick roundup. First, I guess we could touch on the bite-sized eyeshadow palettes, because I know a lot of you guys are here to see, are these $3 eyeshadow palettes good? And I'm going to say, I think it's kind of like a hit and miss situation. I think that happens a lot with drugstore eyeshadows. I think the formulas are very hit and miss. But as far as these neutral ones go, I do really like them, and I didn't face a ton of issues with them. The matte shades in these palettes are hands down my favorite. I'm sure you guys can see just by the look that I have on today. The matte shades were my favorite. They went on so incredibly smooth. They were not patchy at all, and I did not have any trouble blending them. And I believe I used all of the matte shades besides the black in the palette, but all of the browns and the transition shades were really great. I like them a lot, and the mattes impressed me. As far as the shimmer goes, or the metallic, whatever you want to call it, I do like it. I don't think it's like the best metallic slash shimmer that I've ever tried. I feel like it's kind of in an awkward in-between of like a shimmer trying to be a metallic and it's a little bit chunky. I would say definitely my preferred method of application so far is just dry with the finger. I found the formula just to be a little bit chunky upon wetting it, but I think it looks nice. I did have to kind of build it up a couple of times. I still think it looks really nice. I am really enjoying my eye look today. For $3, you guys, I definitely don't think you could go wrong. I think these are incredibly travel friendly, and I do think you could get great looks out of these, especially, like I said 100 times, the matte shades themselves are the best. I am curious to try some more of the metallics in the Pumpkin Pie palette just because those did swatch the best out of all of the shimmery metallic shades that I swatched today. But I think these are good to travel. I think for $3, if you guys are learning how to do eyeshadow, or if you're just looking for some supplementing shades, something for traveling tiny in your makeup bag, like I said, you can't go wrong for $3. And one thing that I kept comparing them to in my mind was something like a Maybelline eyeshadow. To me, Maybelline eyeshadows are not good at all, and they're priced like $8, $10, $12 for their little palettes, whereas these for $3 are so much better, and I think they are a really good drugstore option for eyeshadows. So far, these are a hit from me. Of course, I want to see how they wear throughout the day, but these are just my first impressions. I do like them. The Putty Eye Primer from e.l.f. is really nice as well off of first impression. I don't know if this is my eye playing tricks on me or what it is, but I do feel like those bite-sized eyeshadows just look more intense to me on top of the eye putty primer. Again, we're gonna have to see how they wear, but comparing it to just my concealer and powder versus the putty primer, I just feel like this side of the eyeshadow has a little bit more of an intense look. Like, it's not really that noticeable. I think if I wasn't testing this out and really analyzing the eyeshadow, I wouldn't necessarily notice. The one complaint about this that you guys saw that I had was that I felt like it emphasized a little bit of dryness on my eyes, but now that I have all of these shadows on, I think that they look nice and smooth, and I'm not seeing that show through the eyeshadow. So far, so good on the Putty Eye Primer as well, and I feel like this could be a really good dupe for a MAC paint pot. And lastly, I am really enjoying the Hydrating Camo Concealer as well. I see that beautiful satin finish peeking through. I see that coverage that it has. It's a really beautiful, like, everyday concealer. I see myself wearing this like to class, even with no eyeshadow, for something less glam. I see myself wearing this. To me, I'm huge on first impressions when it comes to base products. Just from past experience, I feel like I could tell pretty quickly if I'm going to like something or dislike something when it comes to base products. And I just have a good feeling that I'm going to like this one. It looks so incredibly smooth and beautiful under my eyes, my nose, my chin. This is a win for me. That is my little wrap up on the 3 e.l.f. products that I tested out for now. Pretty much all in all, I really did enjoy everything. I really enjoy how this look turned out and how all the products are wearing so far. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed seeing this video and spending time with me today. If you did, please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really helps me out. Also, make sure you guys are subscribed to my channel before you leave. We are so close to 10K, and I would love to have you guys here as part of my little YouTube fam. If you don't want to miss out on any of my future videos, click that notification bell down below and you'll get notified every single time that I upload a new video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and of course, I will see you in my next one. Bye guys!